I'm going to take about 3 minutes to just go over last week some of the questions. So when I had asked, what profession do you want to go in as a child? These are the answers that was given: astronaut, athlete, marathon runner, engineer, pilot, and executive. Next question were, what are factors that determine career choice? And there was subjects you enjoy doing: money, parental influence, culture, values, your influence or mentors, what they say, prestige, professions, and your ability and your strength in a specific field. Next question I asked was, what is the main purpose of our existence? And the participants said, to survive, to worship Allah, make the earth a better place, enjoyment and happiness, successful achievement, and serving others. Next one, what is the most sought after son-in-law in India, profession-wise? And we came up with these 5: doctor, lawyer, engineer, businessman, prince, and landowner. Then I asked a question, who are the 3 most important Muslims in the last 100 years, and which Muslims have made the biggest contribution in 100 years? And the participants, these are the names we came up with: Malcolm X, Muhammad Ali, Nazim of Hyderabad, W.D. Muhammad, Alexander Russell Webb, Sheikh bin Baz, Abdul Wahab, Ayatollah Khomeini, the custodian of the Kaaba, and Muhammad Ilyas, rahmatullah alayh. Now, I would have also put Dr. Allama Iqbal, rahmatullah alayh, but the point was, I'm just going over what the audience's responses were. What is the most influential hip hop artist ever? We said Michael Jackson, Tupac, Jay-Z, and Young Scooter. And then I went through these 6 personalities, that this is their profession, this was their career, but they've had, their impact has been very significant. Muhammad Ali, Fazl Rahman, the architect; Muhammad Yunus, who you just heard a great presentation about; M.M. Alim, the holder of the world's record in kills in Air Force combat; and A.Q. Khan, the scientist who's the father of Pakistan's nuclear bomb. So I will go back to this question: what is the most sought after son-in-law in India? And we saw the answers. And and I had mentioned the answer statistically, from India's creation as a state to the mid-90s, the most sought after son-in-law was the government servant, because of lifetime employment. That began to change in the mid-90s due to globalization. So given globalization, anyone have any idea who the most sought after son-in-law is in India currently? It's no longer the government servant. Any ideas? No ideas?
Would a career politician fly as the government servant? Would that be the same thing?
Yeah, that's not really what I'm looking for. So we're under a time constraint, and I'll mention it what it is. It's the IT person. The most sought after son-in-law right now is now the IT person. And why is it the IT person? Any ideas?
Guaranteed work.
Guaranteed work, security, but it's much more than a big part of why the most sought after son-in-law has become the IT person is he can get your daughter out of the country. He can get her to America or to London or to Dubai or Australia. One legal way to get out of the country, if you are in, say, India, for example, like there are 85,000 H-1 visas issued, of which yearly in the US, of which about 70 to 75,000 of them are taken by Indian nationals. So the most sought after son-in-law right now, currently, since the mid-90s, since before the Y2K bug, is IT. It has gone from government servant to IT for the reasons I just mentioned. Of course, the stability, it's a prestige profession, you make money, but it also allows you to immigrate legally. So just keep that in mind now as we move forward, okay? So define good. Anyone want to take a crack at that? Please don't be shy.
Yeah, for the guests that are attending, Brother Ayman, Brother Usman, and Sister Amina, feel free to participate. You can unmute yourselves for this part and participate.
Yes. Anybody have any ideas? Anyone want to define good?
Do the right things.
Okay, do right thing. Anything else? Okay, define great.
You'll be aghast to know that it's better than good.
Okay, better than good. Okay. Better than good. Okay. So basically, what differentiates good from great?
Good is more or less the normal and meeting the expectation. Great exceeding the expectation.
Okay. Excellent. Excellent. Very good, Brother Heyman. So good is satisfactory, high quality, simply good. What is given, whatever resources you're given, and you make something of it. Achieving results, there's some improvement, and it's acceptable and adequate, right? Now, there are many definitions, but for the purposes of this discussion, we'll leave it at this, okay? Now, great is, it's not just satisfactory, it's distinction. It's unusual or considerable. It's out of this world. What isn't given and still make something of it. It's shaping results, it's transformational, it's excellence, and it's the force behind the behavior. Okay? So one thing I would say is, think of this last thing, the force behind the behavior. There's a motivation, right?
Yep.
What is the force behind the behavior? Okay. So what we're arguing here, this is what good is, this is what great is, there's a distinction. And if you want to be great or an outlier, what do you need to be able to do? How do you differentiate? Because all of us, mashallah, on this call, we all are capable of generating revenue, putting food on the table, those types of things, inshallah, are not really that difficult for us. Sure, there are times we have downtime in our career, we could get laid off, those things, but as a general rule, we don't generally have to really struggle to that we're 3 days away if we don't get work to be completely impoverished. But the question is, what is the force behind our behavior? Because that is what is going to determine if you can be great, right? So what is false choice? This we had talked about maybe 3 meetings ago. I had talked about false choice. What is false choice? Does anyone remember?
It's when a choice isn't really.
I'm sorry? Go ahead, brother. Yeah, that was, I think, Brother Aslam. What's false choice?
When a choice isn't really a choice, right? It's kind of the lesser of two evils kind of thing.
Yes, when you're told that there might be only 2 options, and it's much more than 2 options, right? That you're told that, like at post 9/11, George Bush said either you're with us or you're against us, right? It's a false choice. You could be a Muslim, you can be a loyal citizen, but you can be against the war in Iraq. It's a false choice, right? So a false choice is when you're told that there's only 1 option or 2 options, but there are many more options. Okay. So what we mean by this is, and it would take more than a doctoral thesis to talk about this, but reason versus revelation. Someone who's intellectual and who's smart, right, can't believe in revelation. They can't have faith. Because a person who's smart, who's intellectual, they're interested in science. They're interested in facts. They're interested in what is provable. And if you're interested in those things, you would not be, you can't believe in fairy tales and stories. That's how secular fundamentalists try to frame the narrative. Now, of course, this is much more than a doctoral thesis. But the question I'm saying is when people say that it's either reason or revelation, that's a false choice at a very macro level. Okay? So what I want to emphasize today, one of the key points is whatever career you're in, it's a false choice to say career is one thing and how you serve humanity or charity is different. Okay? What we have to do as believers is figure out a way to be whatever career we're in, through that career also to serve humanity. And here I put the example of the community organizer. When Obama ran for president, what was the Republican Party saying? That a community organizer wants to be president, right? I mean, Sarah Palin specifically said at her speech at the Republican National Convention, I'm a mayor of a city and I actually have responsibilities. And it's a little bit more than a community organizer. So here you have a lawyer who became a community organizer and then went on to become the president. So we have to critically begin to evaluate when we are not just selecting careers. What we have to begin to ask ourselves is, through our careers, the skill set that we execute to, say, at the most basic level, to generate income for our families at 6, 8, 10 hours a day, that skill set, is it put to the disposal of humanity outside of just putting food on the table? So that's the question. Okay, so here I mentioned, like, medicine. You can think about this in a different way. You can say, if you're a doctor in medicine, we need people who understand medical ethics, not just now because of the coronavirus. We need people who can go to the classical sources and be able to tell us what Islam's position is going to be on, say, cloning. I was in high school when the first sheep, Dolly, was cloned. It's only a matter of time before not just animals, human beings are cloned. It's going to happen. Anyone who says otherwise is uninformed. We need people who are in the field of medicine, who can also assess the classical resources and be able to say something intelligent about issues regarding medical ethics. For example, if you're in accounting, finance, or business, sure, you should be able to put together a profit and loss statement and a balance sheet. You should be able to do a 10-year plan for a company. But you should also be concerned or looking to research, how do you develop a just economic system? If you're an athlete, sure, your job is to perform at the top level and to win in that sport. But a big, big part of your responsibility is to be a role model for young people who looked up to you, millions of people. And there are people who have done that exceptionally well, such as Muhammad Ali, rahmatullah alayh, right? If you're a biologist or a scientist, we need your help to be able to increase food production, right? And those types of things. If you're in education or teaching, we need holistic education. Not just, you just can't teach the physical science. Even if you're teaching the physical sciences, you have to be able to teach it in a holistic manner, because it can really very positively impact that student's life. If you're in IT, you have to be able to help process improvement in anything that you do. So these are just some examples, because generally what we do is whatever's on the left, that's our profession. And then our contribution to humanity is, say, volunteering at the masjid, giving a little bit of donations and things like that. No, we have to dig a little deeper and say, this skill set that I have, how do I put it to the disposal of humanity in a meaningful way, right? So this is the printing press. Now, first of all, does anybody know, I'm doing okay on time, does anybody know what two inventions were merged in order to create the printing press? Anybody know? Any guesses? Okay, the two inventions that were actually merged in order to create the printing press was the coin punch and the wine press. Gutenberg took the coin punch, which you pull the lever in order to produce a coin, and he merged it with the wine press on how you pressed grapes, and the grape juice ran off in order to make wine. He merged those two things in 1494 to invent the printing press. Now, what book has historically been the most published book in human history?
The Bible.
The Bible. Very good. Excellent. Now, this leads the reason I'm talking about this is I'm going to tie this idea to false choice. When Napoleon comes to Egypt in the late 18th century, the late 1700s, at this point, the Muslim world is still not using the printing press in mass yet, 300 years after its invention. Why? Why is the Muslim world not using the printing press 300 years after its invention? Even though, as Brother Aslam already said, the Bible was the most published book in history. Why? Why were the Muslims still not using the printing press in the late 1700s, 300 years after invention?
Is it because culturally we had an emphasis on writing, like writing out the Quran?
Yeah, that's close. The biggest reason is the bid'ah, is the printing press innovation. But that's a simplistic answer. The answer is much deeper. There were two groups that basically formed a roadblock for the printing press to become mainstream in Muslim society. One, it was, and of course, Islamic scholarship is genuine, it's very important. Certain elements within traditional scholarship. Is this an innovation? Is it bid'ah? Is it allowed in the religion? And the second group was the scribes. The scribes.
Oh yeah, they get put out of business.
They get put out of business. So we have to actually become slightly more sophisticated. So what did we do? False choices put in front of the Ummah. 300 years after its invention, we're not still using a tool. And that is one of the reasons we were so easily colonizable, is that we could not compete intellectually because the West was pumping out material and we were not. The West, or the colonizers, shouldn't say the West, the colonizers were printing newspapers in our countries. And we were still trying to figure out if the printing press is innovation. So, false choice. And to a certain extent, we still haven't caught up, right? From an education perspective, it's very clear. Our country's illiteracy is much higher than the West. So whoever's invading you, if their population is generally more literate than yours, you're going to lose as a general rule. Now, there are exceptions in history, but what I'm trying to emphasize with the story of the printing press, because even the people who are youngsters on this call, I don't think you'd ever forget this. You'll remember this, yes. So Napoleon is coming and he's printing newspapers in Cairo. The people who live in Cairo are not printing newspapers in Cairo. So, false choice. So we have to have a holistic view in order to be effective.
So he's spreading his version of the truth, propaganda.
Exactly. And you can't compete because the tools he has. It's like if I'm going to go out in the front and I have a shovel to dig a hole and you have a bulldozer, you're going to win because you have the bulldozer, I have a shovel.
Even though I might be more sincere.
Exactly. And that's the key thing. That's why I put this. We have to understand this issue of false choice and how it's so self-destructive. And we do that in our careers. So unfortunately, and I mean, I was speaking to somebody and I said, okay, when is the last time that you've heard someone give a khutbah and say, and they're hafiz al-Quran, they have an understanding of certain things and saying, no, if you are a finance person, we need you to do research on, say, a more just economic system. And actually give that motivation or that guidance. They don't. Because we're still doing what we were doing 200 years ago when Napoleon invaded us, for the most part.
I would go further and say we don't even acknowledge the people that have background in finance. We're only speaking to the doctors and maybe a little bit to the IT people.
That's true. So
the bulk of the khutbah is out there.
That's true also. And even that, I have yet to hear a khutbah about what the Muslim response, or even say, this is a question, it is a legitimate question, I don't have the answer to it, but as a community, are we going to have the answer to this even in 50 years, for such as a clone? Okay? So let me move on, but I think at least everyone understands the construct or the point that I'm making. So in order to really be effective, you have to have a holistic view. You have to understand the bigger picture. You have to see the forest through the trees. So I'll put a cartoon here. We have to get out of the tunnel vision. So now we go back to, we talked about what is a productive citizen. Now I'm asking, what does society need? What does society need? Let's just say the society we live in. What does the society need? It's a very broad question, and this is not a trick question. The one on the son-in-law in India was a slightly trick question. This is not. Any ideas on this?
Yeah, right leaders empowered.
Very good. Excellent, brother Amin. The right leaders should be elected or at least be in power. Okay, what else? What else does society need?
Well, so if you build on that, then the people that are doing the electing need to understand, what makes for a good person. Like, why do you need to be a good person in order to be a leader?
Yeah, so we'll put why character, right?
Character.
Okay. What else? What else does society need?
So as Muslims, we talk about we need more people that are journalists and communication majors and things like that. So maybe more tolerance for a variety of choices, vocational choices.
Tolerance of choices in career, right? Excellent.
Direction and guidance.
Very good. And who was that?
Usman.
Excellent. Direction and guidance. Exactly. Because you can't be all confused, right? And then really be productive, right? You have to have some level of surety in your identity, right? Whatever you are, right?
Yep.
And so you need that direction or guidance. Excellent. What else? Very good. See, now we're going to begin to climax, okay? So I think I'm down to about 13 minutes. So what else does society need? Again, keep in mind the topic: career choice and serving humanity and Islam.
So I think you need people that are interested in pursuing a career,
Okay.
right? As opposed to, I think you start off talking about productive citizens. So if you are brought up in a way where your goal in life is to, get a basic degree just so you can check mark a box, or not even get a degree, you just want to go into the workforce so you can buy a new car, you're not, your trajectory is wrong.
Okay, that's good. And I think Brother Usman has mentioned direction and guidance, because if you have direction and guidance, even in your personal life, that the main purpose of your career is a byproduct to put food on the table, but also others, you look at it holistically. Okay, so I'll move on. Next question: how do you give yourself exposure to different fields and professions? So not just, I want to emphasize, let's assume you're talking now as a parent. How do you give your child exposure to different fields and professions when your child is 14, 15, 16, 17 years old?
By being part of the environment yourself first, in the sense you need to first understand what are those fields that will definitely do good to your kid. And then probably you can talk, because you need to sort of, elevate yourself as a person, as a parent, to first the experience actually.
Excellent. Exactly. So if you are not really knowledgeable about different fields, all right, and your thinking is very one-dimensional as a parent, that the only way to make an honest living is to be a doctor or an engineer, you're definitely not going to be able to give sound advice to your child, right? So that's excellent. Understand different fields. How else? So first thing, you have to understand on your own, but how else can you give exposure to your child in different fields and professions?
I think you have to understand the child, right? And what the deficiencies of the child are. So for example, if you want them to work hard, and you've heard that digging ditches is a way to learn to work hard, then the second thing you do is you leverage your connections, and you go to your buddy at the park district and say, hire this kid on to dig ditches for the summer, and they'll learn how to work hard.
Very good. Okay, that's good. Okay, understand your child and then guide them accordingly. Yeah, you can't be a good mentor if you don't understand your mentee. How else can you give yourself or your child exposure to different fields and professions? This is very key. And this is where this is a little concerning for me, because generally when I speak to a Muslim audience on this question, there's a lot of silence. So which means that we haven't really thought about this as much as we should have, right? And if we haven't thought about it, understand, our kids will know even less about it. But I'll move on, inshallah, because I'm going to give the answer to some of these things, at least some possible answer. How do you truly understand a society?
By being
Yeah.
by
so-
being part of the society first, basically.
Excellent. I'm really glad, Brother Uthman, that you're here because you're helping us a lot. Okay,
Yeah,
being
you're
part
not
of
just a consumer, right? It's kind of like in this current crisis, people are understanding that the labor class, right, the people that are driving the trucks, bringing the food, that are in the grocery store stocking the food, these roles are so critical, you know, and it's all of a sudden the calls for immigration have shut down because those are the people that are needed.
But
Very
did we need to have a corona to sort of tell us this? Were
Hopefully,
we in the deep slumber? I mean, we knew that these are the critical services that we always needed as part of the society, but we didn't pay
valued
any
more
attention.
now.
Yeah. No, I think through shock, some people learn certain things that should be obvious. But you know, that's a fair point, Brother Uthman. So how do you truly understand the society? Go back to the Prophet Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam. How did he truly understand that society? What made him intimately understand every dimension of that society? That's a little bit of a hint I'm giving you. How did he intimately understand every dimension of the society?
He did everything possible, that he could do. He was a businessman. He was a good friend. He was a companion. He was a good husband. He was a good friend. He was there in every sphere of life. He tried to achieve the excellence, mashallah. So,
okay,
and
that's
how he
very
could
good. That's very good. So basically, you do not truly understand a society if you do not understand the situation or the people who are the most underprivileged in that society. As a general rule of thumb, if you're 16 years old, just understand that at the most basic level. You do not understand a society if you do not understand the underprivileged people in that society. So the Prophet ﷺ, there's a reason he married the widow. There's a reason he married the divorcee. They were outcasts in the society, and he understood that. They were the underprivileged, and he was a source of protection for them. He understood the orphan.
So would you summarize and say empathy?
That's definitely true. It's definitely empathy, right? Empathy is across everything, but I'm just talking specifically in a social construct. Because most of us on this call are coming from immigrant backgrounds, and we're second generation or third generation immigrants. So the challenge I'm putting forward is, do you really understand the prison industrial complex in the society? Why are African Americans 12% of the population, general population, but 50% of the prisoners? Why is unemployment 3x for African Americans? Do we really understand the welfare mother and her challenges? Now, if I get pulled over by a police officer, it's a routine stop. I don't sweat. I just hope I don't get a ticket, right? And usually they're like, oh, Ahmad, you have a good driver's license. Go ahead, go on your way. That's not the case for a lot of people in the society. So what I'm arguing, and this is where I think ICNA Relief does very good work, et cetera, is that if you don't understand the underprivileged people of that society, you cannot claim to understand that society. You can have some basic knowledge of it, right? But you can't assert in a really that we understand the society.
But why are we trying to understand society?
Because the only way that you can actually make meaningful change is if you understand society.
Assuming we want to make meaningful change.
Exactly, assuming you want to make meaningful change.
A lot of people just want to go through life.
Well, that's yeah. But I think everyone, if you got up today and you're fasting and you're on this call, it's not, you could have just slept for this 40 minutes.
Well, okay, so maybe a lot of people realize they want to make meaningful change once they hit the midlife crisis point or something like that.
That's true also.
Tragedy, right?
So that's what I'm trying to really emphasize here is, now you can't be a scholar on everything, right? You can't be a scholar on economic injustice and then understand the student, and then have deep knowledge of the student loan crisis, understand race relations, understand the prison industrial complex, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. But you should have some basic knowledge about these things if you claim that you're going to serve humanity in this environment, right? And so if that's the case, which I think it is, then the question really becomes is, and I'm not trying to say something unnecessarily provocative, how many of our people who are giving the khutbahs understand this basic question? And yet they're the ones who are giving us guidance. So I'll just leave it at that, just move on to the next question. So I had said, how do you give yourself exposure, right? And these are action items. One, interaction. Interact with people of different races, with different backgrounds, different economic classes, from different neighborhoods, different religions, different industries. Interact with people who are very well traveled, domestically and internationally. People should be multilingual. Spend time, even socially, with people who can speak more than one language. And spend time with people who are well-read. And this has to be a very conscious choice. So, for example, there's a brother whose mother tongue is Spanish, Alex. He's a convert to the masjid. I mean, I had coffee with him a couple of times. And by sitting with him, and he actually is a repair technician for a factory, you get a really good understanding of, say, his work conditions, his challenges, why he likes that job, et cetera, the thinking of people who do those types of jobs. But you have to invest the time. Okay, so this is one fundamental thing that we should be doing as adults, and then we should be encouraging our children to do in some type of safe environment, right? That if your children are only playing with desis, they're going to be at a very big disadvantage when they go to college.
So just to interrupt, this is not just about career, right? This is about your life choices. Like if you think about your traditional construct of a Desi parent or a Muslim parent, and you hear, first off, a name like like the brother you just mentioned,
Mm-hmm.
right? And then secondly, like this is the work that he does. You're not going to want to have your son or daughter marry somebody like that because they're not a doctor, lawyer, engineer, IT person.
Okay, see, so yeah, don't take me off the rails. I think what I'm arguing here is if you want to be a productive member of society, you have to understand the society. You can't understand the society with some basic level of interaction with people, right? And it has to be obviously in a safe environment. And I'm not arguing, okay, you know what, let's find out what the bar scene is like. So let's go to the bars. That's not what's being argued, okay? But we don't do this enough, right? Okay? And so, look, we don't even do it within our own community, right? People are now, see, it's a very different time than when I was younger. When I was younger, there were so few Muslims. And so you had Muslims who were very close friends of yours from different ethnic backgrounds, like Palestinians and Egyptians, et cetera, Pakistanis, Indians, et cetera. Now, over the last 35 years, so many people have come. Generally, people are going to a very homogenous masjids, right? And even when they go to college campuses, you go to think, so all my roommates are Muslim, and if you're Desi, they're all Desi Muslims. And vice versa. So what I'm just trying to articulate is even within the religion, we become much more compartmentalized when we live in a multicultural society, which is just a complete failure. Okay, so let me move on because I have to be respectful of everybody's time. Another big thing is volunteering. Studies prove that those who volunteer their own time are better performers at work. There are multiple studies. There are hundreds. Volunteer. Volunteering builds character, self-fulfillment. You learn to work for more than money. And again, it teaches you conflict resolution because you don't have to be there. And again, different backgrounds and interactions. Volunteering. So these are some of the organizations you can volunteer for or encourage your child, your teenager to volunteer for. Habitat for Humanity, American Red Cross, hospitals. There are places that do ESL teaching that if you're an intelligent 17-year-old, they'll allow you to come and teach. The Peace Corps, you can work even as a job. Food banks, and of course, environmental groups. Now, some of these will not allow you to volunteer if you are under 18. They want a parent to accompany you. But if we're serious about the development of our children, then we should accompany them when they volunteer for these places. So one major action item is interaction. Consciously change who you interact with, right? By sitting with the same group of people talking about the same issues, we're going to be in the same situation. And volunteer. And volunteer outside of your local Islamic center.
But these places don't serve biryani. Come on.
Yeah. Okay. So, like environmental groups, this is the issue of our time: climate change and social dislocation. And there's so many. You can just Google it. And this shows our understanding and our ability to actually impact things when we are. What is our presence in these types of organizations? So these are the key takeaways. One, the importance of humanity versus the physical sciences. We need people as career, they look at the humanities. We need to enhance our critical thinking. One of the drivers for you to choose a career should be the satisfaction and achievement, not just generate money or revenue. Spiritual fulfillment. That should be a reason why you select a job. Okay? Good versus great. You can't be great at anything you're not passionate about. It's very simple. What are you passionate about? What is really important to you? What, when you do, it's not really work. You know? You look forward to doing it. Like they tell you, choose a field that you love, you'll never work a day in your life. Okay, know a little bit about a lot of things. All you have to do is look at someone's library and you have a pretty good idea. They could have 10 books or they could have whatever, 1,000 books. If all the books are about one or two topics, that's fine. But you look at your library. Is a book on politics, then one on social understanding, then one on economic issues. You need to know a little bit about a lot of things. You should not really, unless you're doing a doctoral thesis or something, you should not really read 3 books on the same topic right in a row. And that will help you develop all these things I mentioned, develop a holistic view and understanding. And if you can develop a holistic view and understanding, then inshallah, you can actually make meaningful change. And again, this is important, do your part. The most important one, that's why I put it in red. We talked about this last time. Serving humanity or the religion is not only the imam or scholar or shayukh's responsibility. We should all be looking to do our part. And we should not be deferring that this is the imam's responsibility. Whatever our skill set is, we should look to be putting it to the disposal of humanity in a meaningful way. So like when we talk about volunteering, which one organization has the most committed volunteers? Any ideas? This is a very good case study.
I think Red Cross.
Huh?
Red Cross.
That's a good guess. No, it's more than that. It's a religious organization.
Jehovah's Witness.
Jehovah's Witness.
Yeah, correct.
Exactly.
Those guys go door to door.
Mhm.
Nobody
Yeah,
is out like they do.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. So that's the point, that their level of commitment is almost fanatical. Like one person, that knew a lot about them. I'm not saying this, but he said it. So I'm not trying to pull a Trump thing, but he said Jehovah's Witness has slave labor. Their volunteers are slave labor. But they're one-dimensional. Now that's an extreme example, but I'm trying to put something on the table so we can actually stop. The definition of insanity is doing the same thing over and over again, expecting different results. And so what I'm arguing today is we have to be conscious, and this thing takes work. Anything that we do takes work. Getting a degree takes work. And even if someone were to say, you know what, I'm going to dedicate 2 hours a week to this, you'll be in a very different situation in 6 months, guaranteed. I'm going to volunteer an hour at Habitat for Humanity, hour and a half, or like in a month, I'm going to do 6 hours. And then I'm going to spend another about 3 hours reading or studying. Guaranteed, it might not even take, your understanding will be much more comprehensive, much more holistic, in less than 6 months. And that puts you in a much better situation to actually, in a meaningful way, guide your child. Because we know what happens. Generally, especially for those of us who come from the developing world, what happens? When someone is about to apply for college, they go to the family member who supposedly has been the most successful, who has the most money, and they're giving career advice. And there's all kinds of other implications. As if the only way to make an honest living is being a doctor or engineer. Now, IT has changed that over the last 2 decades, as I mentioned. But we need to really begin to think about this, because our children will be doing this for probably 40, 45, 50 years they'll be working. And unless we understand that through that work they have to serve their religion, we have violated their rights. And is there anyone's rights you should violate less than your own children? Even spousal rights are not at that standard. Because I've had people, that they failed the science exam 4 times, and whether it's over, this was over international, this one case, just completely stressed out. He says, "No, Papa says." Okay, Papa says. Just wasted 3 years of the kid's life, this and that, and you're just wasting. There's many ways to make a living. So inshallah, I will end there. And so, this was the construct. The purpose of our existence is to worship Allah, serve humanity. We serve animals and plants, and we take care of the earth and the water. So inshallah, I'll end there, and